Hello everyone, and welcome to NSTA Web Seminars, where you can find live interactive learning at your desktop. My name is Dorothy Jeanette, and I will be moderating today's program. Today's seminar is titled, A Sustainable Journey to 2050, a 3D Interaction. Our presenters are Deborah Spielmaker, Lindsay Verhage, and Andrea Gardner, and they will be joined by a teacher panel, Morgan Kerr and Stephanie Anair.
And in case you haven't done so already, you will be playing Journey 2050. You can download the game now. It's free. We think it's a good idea if you do this on a separate tablet or maybe in a different browser so that you're able to do some of the other activities with ease tonight, going back and forth between some of the web resources, online videos, and the game. So we really encourage you to download that game for free right now. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into tonight's program. When you go to Journey 2050, you can register as a teacher, and what you get from registration is the ability to track your students and how well they do in the game. So we really encourage you, if you're going to use this in your classroom as a teacher, that you register, and that way you can keep track of the information from your students, and it'll give you access to those reports and additional resources that are part of the Journey 2050 website. And you can see the URL link right there, and probably I can get Dorothy to also paste that one in case you want to go and register as we're going through here this evening. As Dorothy mentioned, my presenters tonight are Andrea Gardner, Lindsay Verhage, and myself, Deborah Spielmaker. Andrea Gardner is a curriculum specialist with the National Center for Agricultural Literacy. Lindsay Verhage is with the Agrium Incorporated, and she's coming to us from Canada, so I don't know where she put her sticker on that map. And I'm here at Utah State University as the director for the National Center for Ag Literacy. Our interaction teachers, Morgan Kerr and Stephanie Anair, you're going to see what they've done in their school together. And now I understand that Morgan has gone to a different school, but some of the work that they've done to incorporate agriculture into their curriculum and have a 3D interaction. And when we get into 3D, we're talking about the three-dimensional learning that is part of the next generation science standards. We'll be going through some resources that are located with agclassroom.org/matrix and searching for Journey 2050, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the program. So here's some things we want to know before we get started. What state are you from? We've already established that. We can see we're from all over the country. What grade level do you teach? And what best describes the community where you work? And so to do that, I'm going to pass this back again to Dorothy so she can gather that data for us.
Okay, everyone. The first question is, where are you joining us from today? So if you would go to the clip art, which is at the bottom of your screen, on the right-hand side of your panel, your left panel, at the very bottom of that is the clip art, which looks like a little mountain with a sun or moon on the side, and pick up one of the custom clip art things and paste. Okay, I think everyone's had a chance to place something on the map if you wanted to address it.
So I think we should go ahead and just move on to the next question, which is, what grade level are we working with here? This is this workshop. We advertise it as a middle school and high school or secondary level workshop, but curious to know what grade levels are joining us this evening.
So the poll is open. If you would choose A, B, C, or D, and the polling button is in the participants window. It's the fourth icon over, and you just select the one that matches your answer. We'll give you another minute to lock in your answers. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and post the results on the screen. The results are now posted for you.
Great. So it does look like we have mostly secondary educators with us, and so we'll be making really explicit connections to that area of curriculum related to the next generation science standards as we go through this evening. But as you'll explore the resources that we have, there are a lot of other resources outside of Journey 2050 that the National Ag in the Classroom has available to you, and also it's easy to adapt some of the resources that we'll be discussing this evening. The next poll is, what does describe the community where you work?
The poll is now open. Okay, we'll give you another 30 seconds to get your answers in, and then I will close the poll and post it to the screen. The poll is now posted to the screen.
Most of the folks joining us are suburban, in a suburban setting. And so you'll have students who are very, not very familiar perhaps with what's happening on the rural countryside growing their food, or agricultural production systems, and how that food actually gets to the grocery store. So that kind of that farm to fork, that food system, or that framework of getting food to them. So that helps us a little bit as we go through this to understand the students that you're working with. And it also kind of helps you to also think how you're going to frame some of the resources that we're going to use tonight. So let's get started with Journey 2050. It is estimated that by 2050, our growing population will require the equivalent of all the food grown in the last 500 years put together. The question is, and it's somewhat a rhetorical question, can farmers simply double their production to meet the demand? And I think that you probably right now will say, no, that's probably not really what's going to happen, because we can't just double that type of production. In fact, scientists don't, that's not even a possibility for that to take place. And that's one of the ways to engage your students, is getting to think about, well, can we just double the production to meet this demand? And the answer is really no. And in fact, we take a look at the global food systems map. I found this very complex diagram for the global food system, and as you can see, it is pretty crazy, all the different things that go on to what we're calling the sustainable interaction, because all of this has to take place to get food to that suburban, rural, or even urban location. And so there's a lot of detail here. I'm not going to break it down, but you can see that there's energy, water, money, there's waste, there's consumers, there's a social, cultural, there's a political and governance. Maybe I'll grab a hold of one of these tools right here. The political governance section here, and over here we've got the social cultural aspects of it, the energy aspects of it, the economic aspect of it, science, technology, and all these things are part of this sustainable interaction to get our food and to feed our growing population. Let's see if we can break that down a little bit and make it a little bit simpler as we look at food systems then. So the question here is, what's your role? If you're talking about the farming inputs, that's actually, these are the kinds of things that farmers concern themselves with: the sunlight, chemicals, know-how, energy, seed, and all of those sort of things. And then there's the economic system that's part of that food system. And the biological systems, these are sometimes things we can't control, like weather. And the other things that are happening on the land, like biodiversity, land resources, climate change, pollution, animal welfare, and those kinds of things that are part of a biological system. All of this feeds into this area called supply, and down here we have this other interaction, if you will, with the food system, the social interaction. So that's talking about the feed, culture, education, access, media, advertising, and social network. And then over here on the side, there's this political system. This question then, what is your role, is something that students in this next 50 years are really going to have to think about as we look at, going to a population of 9 billion. And I didn't touch too much on economic, but that was part of the economic systems of money and food. Let's see if we make this just even a little bit simpler than that. So, oops, yeah, there we go. If we're looking at why 2050 and how we're going from 7 billion people today to the estimated 9 billion, there's a pretty good, very visual way to look at this with this video that's part of a lesson that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But right now, I would like you all to go, and the way this works here with Blackboard Interactive is Dorothy's going to place the URL here of where this video is located in the chat box, and you'll click on it, and then we'll come back. She'll set a little timer for the length of the video, and we'll come back on the back side and talk about some of the content in that video.
Hello, everyone. I've posted the link for you for the video. It's about 2.5 minutes. We'll give you a few moments to get there and then watch it, and I'll set a timer for 2:30 and let you know when that time is up.
So I think most of you should be back by now from watching the video. And 7 billion, how did we get so big so fast? I think that's a good visualization for most of us to hear and see the sounds and understand what the situation is. If you are interested in the math, Hans Rosling has some really good videos. In fact, it may have populated on the side while you were watching this YouTube video to really look at the math of going from 7 billion to 9 billion. And that's just one way to kind of provide an interest approach to your students. But this question right here, what is a billion? Oftentimes we use these words, billion, million, we kind of throw it around, and it doesn't really, it's a word. It doesn't really resonate like how big of a word it is because it's really not that many letters. So this is a good way to kind of explain to your students what that number, a billion, really is. If you had $1 billion and you spent $1,000 every day, it would take 1,000,000 days or 2,740 years to spend $1 billion. So that gives them some sort of idea about how big a billion is, because they think, oh, I could spend $1,000 every day really easy, but it would take to spend out that 1,002,740 years to spend out that $1 billion. So that's just a way to kind of get them to visualize the size of a billion. So some terms that we're going to use tonight, and they're used throughout the Journey 2050 lesson plans and game, is sustainable. And there's a lot of literature out there about defining sustainability and sustainable agriculture. But these are this is kind of the definition that we'll be using throughout this evening, and it's very summed up. There are lengthy papers and research articles about these terms, but sustainable, meeting the economic, social, and environmental needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. That's one of the ways that we will be using that term throughout the evening and throughout the Journey 2050 resources. And then sustainable agriculture, using the best farming practices to grow the most food and fiber on the land for long-term economic, social, and environmental success. And as we get into talking about the game, this is what we're trying to balance, the economic, social, and environmental success. So now that we have some common terminology, we can move in a little bit here to watching a little bit more about Journey 2050. Journey 2050 is a curriculum. It has a game, it has PowerPoint slides, and as Andrea shares the actual resources, she'll go over those in more detail. But before we get into the actual curriculum resources, we're going to show you here the introductory video to Journey 2050 to further guide the understanding about what sustainability is between the economy, society, and environment. So if Dorothy would go ahead and paste that link into the chat window, we'll go ahead and take some time to watch that short video.
The link is in the chat window for you. It's about 3 minutes and 50 seconds, so I'll set a timer for about that time, and we'll let you know when we're coming back. Enjoy the video. Okay, my timer has ended, so let's have everyone come back.
Okay, so if you took a look at that, that was a nice overview for looking at sustainability. And one of the things about science in the NGSS is looking at science as a way of knowing. We focus on how we know and when we can solve those problems. And certainly a population going to 9 billion is a problem, and there are lots of things to be looked at in terms of the economy, society, and the environment. So in the NGSS, the science way of knowing, the nature of science, there's outlined how science is that way of knowing. And let's take a look over here at the high school. It's a litlittle bit blurry, but if you go to the NSPA webpage, it's pretty easy to see. And this is building upon previous things happening in the primary, elementary, and middle school levels. But in middle school, science is both the body of knowledge and the process and practices used to add to that body of knowledge. Science is the knowledge cumulative, and many people from mainly generations and nations have contributed to science knowledge. And then science is a way of knowing used by many people, not just scientists. And that's really important as we look culturally in those political systems, those social systems, and how you fit into the food system. And those of you who are in high school, science is both a body of knowledge and represents current understanding of natural systems, processes used to refine, elaborate, revise, and extend this knowledge. I feel like the Journey 2050 resources and the game itself really will drive this point home to your students. And student is a unique way of knowing that there are other ways of knowing. There's going to be conversations about how things are done best to meet that. And what's nice about this game, as you saw, that you are looking at 3 different farming families around the world. So it's not going to be one size fits all, but certainly we're all living on this somewhat spaceship called Earth, and everybody's got to be able to see how they can survive in their different environments. And so it's just another way of knowing that might be that is unique to the situation that you have. Science has distinguished itself from the other ways of knowing through the use of empirical standards, logical argumentation, and skeptical review. And that goes to the point of critically thinking about how to solve some of these problems. And then finally, science knowledge has history that includes the refinement and changes to theories, ideas, and beliefs over time. These are some of the things, these concepts from the nature of science that are part of the NGSS are what you should be looking for as you evaluate curricula and resources and activities that your students do within science. This sustainable unit then brings in a lot of the different connections between science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM, because you're going to need to use all of those tools to solve the problems of feeding 9 billion people. So science then, or the vision for science proficiency, you may have seen this if you've been around the next generation science standards very long. You've probably seen this logo: practices, core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. And there's a web link here for more on the next generation science standards. Not all states have adopted these standards, but most states have at least most of the concepts involved, even if they're using their state curriculum. This can be adapted for those states, and a lot of states are adapting the NGSS practice standards or topics in their own curricula just to make sure that things are covered in a uniform way nationally. And of course, everybody's probably aware of that within their own state. But the 3D learning here, the 3-dimensional learning that we're going to be reviewing here quickly, and then coming back after you've gone through using some of the resources to see what patterns you saw related to 3 dimensions of learning. The science and engineering practices, here in that dimension we're looking at the behaviors and skills of science and engineering. The cross-cutting concepts, the applications across the disciplines, what kinds of things do we see in terms of systems and causes and effects, related to the science concepts. And then finally, the disciplinary core ideas, the disciplines in science or in STEM. And this is really getting at the different types of sciences that we have siloed, physical sciences, biological sciences, and putting those things into one place where we're grabbing from all the different science disciplines to really solve problems and answer questions through an interdisciplinary approach to STEM. I'm not going to go through these in too much more detail because I want you to experience the program, and then we'll come back and see what we saw in the program that can check these items off in three-dimensional learning. So with that, are there any questions so far that we can answer about the program, about science and how it relates to Journey 2050? We'll just pause here for just a second.
Hi, this is Dorothy. Please type your questions in the chat. We'll take the first two that come in. While we're waiting for people to type them in, there was a question earlier, Deborah, on the graphics that you posted on the food system, and also the first one on sustainable ag, those big graphics, colorful graphics. Someone asked if there was a poster of those.
I actually got sent those in an email and requested from the company, I had a colleague request from the company the actual PDFs, and we can make those available to you. They are free for use as a PDF, and we can make those available in the archives of this program so that you can grab those and use them yourself, and of course they'll be part of the PowerPoint slides, but to my knowledge they're just in a PDF and not in any kind of poster that you can order anywhere.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions typed into the chat at this moment, so why don't we continue moving forward and keep typing in your questions as they come up.
Sounds great. I will turn the mic over to Andrea, who will be actually now beginning the conversation of going through some of the resources and the lessons that we have for Journey 2050 and how to interact with the game.
All right, to start off with, let's go ahead and answer this question. This is related to one of the lessons that we have here in the Journey 2050 series, so let's start with this.
And the poll is open, so please select A, B, C, or D according to your answer. We'll give you about a minute to select your answers, and then I'll close the poll. Okay, our answers are on the screen there for you.
All right, it looks like A, B, and C are the three that people have chosen. The correct answer is B. I'm going to move on to the next slide to show you an image that helps illustrate this a little bit. The largest portion of our Earth is taken up in oceans, ice, lakes, and rivers. And then if we take the remaining part that is actually land, not all land is arable or able to farm. We have places that are mountains, the Arctic, Antarctic, desert, landscapes. We also have cities and land that's too dry, wet, or rocky. So if you look at this tiny red, see if I can find my little pointer here. If you look at this just small red section, this is all we have to grow the food and fiber and fuel that we need to live and to sustain human life. So if you refer back to the very first question we asked of can farmers just simply double their production, the answer is no, and part of this reason is right here in this diagram that shows us that we are limited to how much land we have to actually farm and to grow the food and fiber that we need. So that's just a little illustration. This, like I said, is found in one of the lessons. It's an interest approach to help students start to think about and process some of the stuff that you'll be teaching them. Moving on, my goal in this section of the webinar is for you guys to be able to leave with some lesson plans in hand. I know when I was teaching, I would count it as a success in professional development if I felt like I could walk away and be ready to teach something to my students. And so hopefully I can do that for you today. The first question to ask in this is, where does Journey 2050 fit in my curriculum? For both middle school and high school, in the Earth and Space Science curriculum, you will find standards and objectives on human impacts and human sustainability. These lessons fit right in. If by chance you are a teacher in other subjects, or we did have several people in the beginning poll that weren't in K through 12 education or other, some of you are in higher education, they do also fit in standards in history, geography, and some of the social studies classes. So these lessons do have quite a wide scope of information in them. One thing to keep in mind as we go through these lessons is remember that everything you're seeing and learning about is free and it's at your fingertips. So like I said, I really want you to be able to walk away and have a great tool in your hands that's going to save you some time as teachers and educators. So now that we know where they fit in the curriculum, here are the 6 lessons. This is a series of 6 lessons. Each of them is tied to a level of the sustainability game, which will be introduced to you by our next presenter. The first lesson is an introduction to sustainable agriculture. The second is on plant health. The third on water. The fourth on economy. The fifth on land use. And then the sixth pulls it all together and talks about careers to help students understand what type of careers are going to make this sustainability possible in the future. Some of the key questions that I want you to keep in mind as we're introducing these lessons and that these lessons answer is, what is sustainable agriculture? How does plant health impact food production? How much fresh water do we have? A lot of students, will think about the ocean and how much water we have there, but may not tie that to realize that it's not necessarily usable in every form. Okay, how does science impact the economy? How much land do we have to produce food? And finally, how will the future careers impact our food sustainability? What part will they play in sustaining our future? So the overarching question of all of this is, how will we sustainably feed over 9 billion people by the year 2050? A couple of the things I also wanted to point out, I know oftentimes as teachers, as we're searching for curriculum to make lesson plans and fill in our schedule through the year, kind of look for keywords. I know when I was teaching that about everything that you do, every once in a while you come across things that just in your everyday activities think, oh, I can use that for class. But some of the topics that you'll find in these lessons, like I said, those keywords that you're always watching out for, things like population growth and food waste. Now, food waste is something that is covered in these lessons and helps students realize how much food waste really impacts our sustainability. Of all the food that just gets wasted, which in a school, you could think of just the school lunchroom and all the food that's thrown away every day. How much water did it take to produce the food that just gets thrown away at your school alone? That's a great question to pose to your students and help them realize not just that the food is wasted, but that the natural resources used to produce it are also wasted. Other subjects, soil nutrients, fertilizer, water conservation, arable land that we've just talked about recently. What does climate have to do? Climate change, geography. All of these things are covered in these 6 lessons. What we're going to do now is I'm going to turn you back over to Dorothy, and she is going to put up a link for a YouTube tutorial. And I want you to go watch this. This is going to give you an introduction to the lessons and the lesson format, and also tell you where to find these lessons.
Hello everyone, I'm posting the link for you in the chat box. We'll set a 4-minute timer for you and let you know when the 4 minutes is up. So please go and watch the video. Thank you. Hello everyone. You should have had time by now to watch the entire video, so we'll return to our speaker.
All right, I chose this screenshot for the movie because this is, I think, really key to helping you prepare for the lessons. Just know that every lesson, like I said in the video, has an interest approach followed by a video clip, followed by a short lesson that's outlined in the lesson plan. The students will then play one level of the sustainability farming game, and then there's also a wrap-up, just something you can do to pull everything together for your students and wrap the lesson up. We've tried to make it just as teacher-friendly as possible, that you can pick it up and fly with it, even if your knowledge, your background knowledge isn't as good as you feel like it should be. We've got everything there to hopefully give you everything you need for success. So now what we want to do is turn a little bit of time over to you. If you can pull up a web browser in your computer and go to the website www.agclassroom.org. This will be what you see approximately on the page. This is the home page for the National Agriculture in the Classroom website. On the bottom left side, there's a box that says Curriculum Matrix. Deborah's going to be talking about this a little bit more, a little further into our presentation. But this is a database of lesson plans for K through 12 teachers, and these Journey 2050 lessons are housed there. I'll give you just a minute to get there. So if you want to be pulling up the website, web browser, going to www.agclassroom.org. In the bottom left-hand corner, type in the search box. You can type in Journey 2050 or even just J 2050 will also pull it up. Let me know if I'm going too fast, but you should get a page that looks like this. This is the search return. And there will be a list of 12 lessons. Now, I already told you that there's 6 lessons. The reason that there's now 12 is because there is both a middle school version and a high school version. Now, the only difference between these two grade levels is the alignment to standards. So as we mentioned before, that these lessons are aligned to science, history, social studies, geography standards. Each lesson has individual alignment, and so that's why there's 2 listed. So if you wanted to click on lesson 1 for whichever class or whichever grade level you teach, that is going to be your next step. So please click on lesson number 1. Okay, again, the screen here is just showing a screenshot of what you'll see in the beginning. Journey 2050 Lesson 1, Introduction to Sustainable Agriculture. The video already introduced you, scrolled you through the lesson, so I'm not going to take the time right now to do that. So we'll move on to the next one. You should, like I said, this is the first lesson. You can keep going. What I hope that you guys are feeling is, hallelujah, we have 6 lesson plans that are all ready to go. Like I said, each of those lessons are formatted the same. You can go right through them. Another thing I wanted you to know before I finish my section here is to make sure that you know that you can reach out to me to ask any questions that you need to. If you scroll to the very bottom of any page of the agclassroom.org website, there's a button that says Matrix Resource Questions. If you click on that button, you can send me a question directly. That actually goes right to my work email. So if a couple months down the road you get to this in your curriculum and you can't remember something or you need help with something, please send me an email. I'm so happy to help you. And just remember that that feature is there. So if no one has any questions at this point, I'm going to turn you over. Actually, there's one more portion right here. The balance of sustainability. sustainability barrel was introduced in the very, very first video that you watched about the Journey 2050 program. And this is something that is used as an illustration throughout the lessons to help students recognize that sustainability isn't just one factor, it's several that all work together. The lowest point of our sustainability is what determines our overall sustainability. So if there's one area that's low, that's something that we need to work on. And as the students go through the game, which will be introduced to you with our very next speaker, as they go through the game, they're going to be able to see that actually come to play and work as they go through the game. So at this time, I'm going to turn the time over to Lindsay as she introduces you to the game.
Thanks, Andrea. So there is a video that we're going to watch just quickly. It's testimonial from teachers who were given in the Journey 2050 link, and we took a camera crew into their classroom, and the kids never heard of Journey 2050. So the video that you guys get to watch is true testimonials from students. They were not prompted in any way. So what they say is exactly what they feel the program. We wanted to share this with you so that you get insight into what kids thought of the game. So if you could share the link, Dorothy.
The link is already posted in the chat box for people, and it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so I'll set a 2-minute, 30-second timer. Enjoy the video, everyone. Okay, everyone, the time is up. Let's come back.
So now for the exciting part of Journey 2050, you guys actually get to try level 1, which is a demonstration of the virtual farm simulation that we built. So on this level, you're going to virtually farm in Kenya. It is a demo, so it's going to walk you through how to play the game. Once you complete the demo, come back to the session. It should take about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll set a 5-minute timer. Am I correct in assuming that they would open the downloaded game and play level 1 of Journey 2050?
Yep, that's exactly right, Dorothy. So if you have it on a tablet, you could download it from the App Store, Windows Store, and Google Play for free, or open a separate browser, journey2050.com, and right on the home screen it says Let's Play. You're going to look for this blue button on the journey2050.com website. So for those who have completed their Demo 1, Level 1, if you could write your sustainability score on this blank page, that would be great. We'd like to see where you scored at. So that would be the score that was on the sustainability barrel that Andrea described.
We'll give people about 1 more minute, and please put your scores in as they come in. Hello, everyone. I think we'll want to come back to the discussion, and if you could post your moderator scores, or not your moderator scores, your game scores, that would be wonderful. Please use your text tool to type your answer on the screen if you can. So that is off to the right of this panel. It looks like a text box with a page with some writing on it. So pick up that tool and type in your score. Thank you. And we do realize that some of you may still be playing the game, or you may not have been able to open it successfully. We hope you'll be able to return to it later.
So it looks like there's a variety, lots of 10s. Also in the chat, I can see a lot of 10s coming in. That's normal, and don't feel bad, it's just a demonstration. So the sustainability score on the first level doesn't actually count for much. It's just to teach the students how to use the virtual farm game. As you progress through each level, the sustainability barrel builds up. There's more factors that you have to balance. There's more fields, there's more crops, there's more community investment opportunities. So some of you would have maybe got a score of 20 or 90, and that might have been because you made an investment into the game. The 90 score was mine, and that's because I play all the time. Oh, we got to somebody that got 100, so likely you made an investment after. The investments help with your ripple effect. So every choice that the students make in the game, it's going to have a ripple throughout the rest of the gameplay. So I'm going to show you a screenshot that looks like this, and this is from level 2. So as you go on to each level, there's more complexity, more fun elements, and kids are gamers. They get it. They actually don't need the demonstration. It's usually the teachers and the adults that need it. To be honest, it's a generation of technology-driven kids. So this is really important though, because each level you farm in a different country. So you start off farming in Kenya, then you go to India, and then Canada. There's real farm families that guide the students through the experience. And the illustrations are actually what those farms look like, and the community investment opportunities are real to those farm families. So it gives the kids a really great perspective of what's happening locally in North America, but also globally around the world, and the choices that we're making. The sustainability score is what we're making the students pay attention to, because true sustainability in agriculture ensures that they're balancing their economic, social, and environmental footprint. If we didn't have that score, we found that kids thought they just had to be rich, which is great, but they also need to understand the importance of balancing their social and environmental footprint as well. This is the game screenshot from level 5. So in level 5, as Andrea mentioned, it's more about land use, arable land, population density, land use choices. So this is just a really quick game to get the kids thinking about stakeholders and how they all have an influence on how our land is used, and it really reinforces best management practices. So it doesn't matter if we're in a city or if we're on a farm, there's choices that we're making that are impacting how we're using our land. This is a screenshot from level 6. So this is a career game, just a really quick win. It takes 5-6 minutes for the kids to complete it. As they're going through, they're picking different choices to build an avatar. So do they want to work inside or outside? What do they want to take to work when they're older? On the back end, it's narrowing down different careers in agriculture that they might like. So the really big eye-opener for the students is to realize that it's not just the farmer working in agriculture, that there's a lot of people working together, and there's a lot of opportunities in the industry if they're interested. Journey 2050 as a game, so especially the virtual farm simulation, was so popular. We currently have 40,000 downloads from the App Store. But we never encourage students to really download it from the App Store to play at home because it has timers. So exactly how you guys witnessed right now, there's a timer so that you start and stop at the same time. And that's how we keep the lessons controlled to the learning of what's going to happen in the classroom. So we built another game, and it's called Farmers 2050. And it's an extension of Journey. It allows the students to play at home when there's no timers, there's more commodities. They get to plant crops, raise livestock. They get introduced to a bunch of different career opportunities. It's still core to that foundation of Journey 2050 though. They still have to balance their social, economic, and environmental footprint to level up. But what's really fun as well is it's similar to something like Heyday. If you guys have ever played any farming games, Heyday or Farmville, the difference is it's based on real agriculture. So droughts occur, mortgage payments come due. They get to craft goods, so if they grow apples and harvest their wheat, they could go make an apple pie to sell in the market. They have to trade goods with other countries, so if they can't grow it on their farm, they have to find another country to grow it in. All of these games that we're talking about, the entire Journey 2050 program and Farmers 2050, they're free. There's no ads and there's no in-app purchases ever, so it's a great learning opportunity. Everything was built, as Andrea and Deb said, to ensure that it's science-based, fun, interactive, and links to curriculum. So Deb, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks Lindsay. Thanks Andrea. I'm hoping that as you were going through that demonstration of the game, that you saw a little bit of the 3D or the 3 dimensions of learning. The practices, I'm going to break these out just a little bit here. The practices really describe the behaviors that scientists engage in, and when we're looking at solving the problem of feeding a 9 billion population, we really have to think about what we have in terms of the resources, building models for that, looking at models in weathering, and looking at a resource that we have in the natural world. And so the key concepts that are underneath engineering, science and engineering practices are observation, what is the phenomena going on. And for example, you might have noticed that you have these place in Kenya, place in India, place in Canada. Why did the phenomena here is why do the same plants yield so differently in different locations? So the game tries to make things as real as possible related to that area's environment, soil, the inputs that they have, and resources that they have available. That's quite different. That question, why do some plants yield so differently in different locations, is quite different than asking how do fertilizers work. It's getting them to think critically about many things going on, and that goes to this next bullet about inquiry and investigation, solving the problem. In this case, their problem is how do I keep that sustainability barrel pretty even so that I'm managing that in a sustainable way and having hopefully a higher score than what I had, which was a 10, even though Lindsay did say it was kind of preset that way. But building models and systems, you can take from the games, build off on the lessons, looking at different modeling. What would happen if the weather changed? What would happen if there was an interruption in some part of a food system? Throwing in those kind of little problems as they go along and bringing them back from the game, much like that big food systems poster that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. Of course, they can work collaboratively. You can put them in groups of 2. You can put them as having peer-to-peer. You can collect the data, as we mentioned, as you log in as a teacher on each student. It promotes some critical thinking. Wonder if I did this. Wonder if I did that. How's that going to play out in a particular situation? Some creativity and obviously some communication. So that's one of the 3 dimensions of learning in terms of practices. The next part of 3D learning is the cross-cutting concepts. And in here we're looking for patterns, cause and effect. And I think of all the things underneath this particular dimension of learning, cause and effect is really easy to identify. What happens when I do this? What is the effect in terms of my sustainability score? What happened because I made this choice? Looking at the different scales, I think that's what's interesting too, is that you're looking at the different scales of operations from 3 different locations on the globe, the different systems, energy and matter obviously a part of the technologies that are involved in each location, structure and function, that's more about the different plants. So there's ways to spin off from this game and put it into the other pieces of your curriculum. And then the last one there, stability and change. And of course, in terms of climate and feeding everyone with that growing population, that would be a big concern. The final dimension of learning is the core ideas, and this is that disciplinary core ideas that I talked about at the first part, where we're looking at the ideas with broad importance across those traditional science disciplines, physical sciences and the life sciences, and linking that up with engineering and technology. we're trying to instill in them some critical thinking for the key tools of problem solving and make things relatable and relevant to them. And as Lindsay mentioned, they get pretty excited about playing that game, but at the same time, you can use that for very teachable moments. And then down here, building a learning progression as they leap off and learn and advance in the game, as all these games are. They progress and they hopefully make better decisions to have a better sustainability score. So that's how Journey 2050 in the game and also in the lessons, which we haven't, Andrea kind of breezed through that. But as you look at the lessons themselves, you can do several of the engagement activities and some of the other activities aside from the game and link that to the rest of your curriculum. So I really encourage you to take a look at the details of each one of those lessons. Now I want to introduce our teachers, Stephanie and Morgan. These are two national award-winning teachers as recognized by the National Agriculture in the Classroom organization this past summer. They are from Maine and they work together in a school. Without much further ado, I want to play their video to show you some of the things that they did to encourage and build upon this idea of teaching students about sustainable agriculture and agricultural systems. And then when we come back, you can, and as you watch the video, you can put questions in the chat box, and we'll let those teachers respond about their experience with agriculture in their school and classroom.
Hello, everyone. The video is about 3 minutes and 20 seconds, so we'll put a 3-minute, 30-second timer on to give you time to get there. And I'm posting a link for you in the chat box right now. Enjoy the video.
When you get there, click the arrow to start the video at the bottom left of the video.
Marla Garnetary of Hawkinsville, Georgia, teaches.
Hello, our timer has ended, so hopefully you've had a chance to watch that video. I'll turn it back over to Deborah.
Yeah, and I actually just want to turn it back over to teachers and anybody in the audience who wants to ask a question of Stephanie and Morgan. I put in there that was a really large garden, and they said that's actually a garden we visited, but you have the ability to talk by using your microphones now. So if there's any questions from the group and you can pose them, now we can answer them, or I can keep watching it and I can pause later as we get through the end of this program.
Actually, we'll ask you to post your questions in the chat box.
Stephanie, do you want to address the gardening that your students did?
We actually got a grant, probably our second year teaching, to build some raised beds. We kind of had a little garden that was kind of another teacher's project, so we really wanted to kind of bring that to life. So we got the grant, and you saw some of the pictures of us building. We had parents and students come in on a Saturday, and they just blew us away with how fast they put stuff together for us. So we really started with raised beds and did science projects with the raised beds. So it was great to see that transform. Unfortunately, they then decided we had to move the garden because of adding an addition to our school. So we kind of have to put our garden back together. So that's been kind of a learning project for us too.
There's a question from Danielle. What was the length of time it took to fully implement the idea from paper to reality of the gardens?
Well,
I can take that one.
Oh, good.
You want to take it or do you want me to take it? All right. This is Morgan. The amount of time it probably took from paper to reality was well over a year. So we started that off with a group of 5th graders, and we started the planning process at the end of the 5th grade year. They helped us write the grant, so they were involved in learning about persuasive writing, coming up with ideas of why it was important to have a school garden, and then we used that in the grant writing process, received the grant, and purchased the supplies the following year, and then the following spring we got the garden built and started planting. So all said it was probably about a year's time getting everything from start to finish.
There was a second question that there was a comment about using it for heredity and an adaptations unit, and at the end they wondered if Journey 250 addresses those standards.
So actually in the Journey 2050, we don't get too much into the heredity or genetics of the seeds or anything like that. But inside on agclassroom.org, and we're going to jump over there if we have a minute here, you can search for the term heredity, and we have several other, I'm thinking at least 5 other lessons on that topic that could then be a spin into the Journey 2050 resources that you have.
And one last quick question. How is the garden maintained over the summer? That's always an issue.
So we, Morgan and I spent a lot of time there in the garden, and then that second year that we had it, we set up kind of a schedule with some of the students who wanted to kind of volunteer there, parents who wanted to volunteer, some community members, and kind of it was if you go to the garden and you help maintain it, then they could take vegetables and things for their families, and that actually worked out really, really nicely for us. It is definitely one of the biggest problems, I think, with schools starting gardens is what do we do in the summer?
Especially in Maine, where our growing season is so short, and most of it is happening during the summer.
Yeah, thanks for that. That is actually the biggest challenge that I've heard from teachers who experience winter. But they found ways to work around it because they felt like it was that important and gone to doing things indoors and that sort of thing. I know that there'll be some time after we kind of sign off on the main part of the webinar, and I'm sure Morgan and Stephanie will hang in there if you have additional questions, but these teachers really went the extra mile to really get their kids to understand food systems. I was really impressed and glad that they could join us for this webinar. So one of the things I mentioned, somebody asked about genetics and asked about whether or not there were things linked to Journey 2050. When you go to agclassroom.org, and if you have a browser open, you can quickly do it. But you can search these kinds of terms, and one of the terms is genetics, or you can search heredity, or you can search pollination, and you will get a return of lessons. Here we search the term sustainable, and you can check middle school grade, and then inside of that, it'll populate with a series of lessons back to you. And because we've got not so much time here, I was going to ask you all what you maybe found inside of there, but you will see a lot of titles returned to you on those topics that I mentioned, different lessons, and then of course checking different grade levels. So that's one of the resources that it can be spun off to inside of the Journey 2050. One of the resources on the bottom of 2050 when I searched sustainable was a lesson called Planet Zorkon. I would say of all the lessons I have done with students that's in real time, very physical lesson where they're all outside working on a Planet Zorkon with a tarp or even cleared desks to the side of a classroom. This is a lesson about a planet that has resources because Earth has lost its resources and now you need to go and get the resources to sustain life. And so Planet Zorkon, if you're looking for something that's off of the iPad or off of the computer screen that you want to engage in with a similar concept, you will see Planet Zorkon as one of those options. And there's things underneath called companion resources. And in fact, there's a kit. You can build your own kit. We tell you the list of materials that you're going to need, but you can actually order a kit online and have that sent to you or make it yourself if you have that kind of time to go and gather the resources. So that's just another way to search agclassroom.org, and there's a photo of the kit, Planet Zorkon, with all the little things that you need. most of this you can find in your pantry. There's also the little cards that identify what you are in terms of the game. And then nice thing about the curriculum matrix is that all of the lessons that a particular kit is related to is populated at the bottom of that particular resource. Last thing here on the lesson page at the very bottom, Andrea mentioned all of the standards are linked. We have a tab for agricultural literacy, a tab for educational content, and the Common Core. And when you roll over each one of these standards, it will show you the standard that that particular lesson meets. So you can, rest assured that there's been some adjustment to where, in this case, Journey 2050 lessons have meet the curriculum. If you like what you see inside of the curriculum matrix and you don't want to lose track of where it is, you can create your own binder, as noted here with the second red arrow. And each time you log in, you'll see the same lessons that you saved. And if we made changes and added resources to it, it'll populate with those new resources. So it's better than having an actual physical binder where things are printed and they don't get updated in real time. If you have a great resource, we encourage you to submit this to the Submit a Resource button right here in the National Curriculum Matrix, and then we'll put it under review and link it to, hopefully you've got it linked to some nice standards, and we'll promote that on agclassroom.org. Finally, on the main page is more links for teachers, and you can explore those on your own and take a look at Ag Literacy Outcomes, AgriWorld, and more things in the Matrix, and how to become an Excellence in Teaching Award recipient like Morgan and Stephanie, and I really appreciate them stepping in with us tonight. We're out of time. I'm going to pitch it back to Dorothy, and I think she has some things she needs to do to wrap up.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank our presenters from the InterAgtion experts, Andrea Gardner, Lindsay Verhage, Deborah Spielmaker, and our InterAgtion teachers, Morgan Kerr and Stephanie Anair. We also want to thank the National Science Teachers Association and the NSTA Web Seminar team. The administration of NSTA, we thank them for the support of web seminars.